My fiancée tried to tell me that her affair was merely a test. I didn't buy it. I simply said goodbye and walked out. Let me start from the beginning. Yesterday, I met my fiancée at our wedding venue for a meeting to finalize details. Just 4 months before the big day, we had driven separately because she needed to leave straight from work afterward. Towards the end of our meeting, she mentioned that her friend was dropping off her rental car and needed a ride home. She asked if I could help, and I said yes, thinking nothing of it. The venue wasn't far from our place, and I knew her friend well enough. I got home and tried reaching out to her for the next 3 hours, but there was no response. Around 1:30 a.m., I texted her friend to see if she had made it home safely, as I was starting to get worried. Eventually, my fiancée came home and apologized for taking so long, saying she had hung out with her friend before leaving. I didn't think much of it, just asked her to keep me in the loop next time. A few minutes later, her friend texted me and said she didn't meet with my fiancé that evening. I was confused, so I asked her why she would say that, but she insisted she couldn't control what her friend said. By now, I was feeling suspicious, and I did something I've never done before. I looked at her phone records. Yes, I did, and I don't regret it. I saw that, after she went outside, she made a call to the friend who had texted me. I also noticed an hour-long call with a number I didn't recognize while she was on her way to the venue. I asked her about where she went to return the rental, and she answered quickly and without hesitation. Everything seemed fine, but something wasn't adding up. I thought maybe I was overreacting and decided to sleep on it. The next morning, I asked her to show me the text from her friend asking for the ride, admitting that I had been wrong to question her the night before. She refused. I told her that I had seen her on the phone while we were driving to the venue and asked who she had been speaking to. She claimed it was just a friend she picked up later. That's when I knew she was lying. I told her I had seen the phone records and knew her story didn't add up. She quickly changed her explanation, saying she had to meet with a coworker to discuss a patient. I asked her who the coworker was and why the conversation couldn't happen over the phone. She said it was because she had to show him certain techniques in person, and his name was Michael. At this point, I was completely suspicious. We had always been honest with each other, and I knew something was off. I asked to see the text with Michael. She refused again. I pressed her, asking why she was hiding something if there was nothing to conceal. I asked if she was having an affair or if she no longer wanted to be with me. She paused, then began listing everything wrong with me. How I worked too much, didn't spend enough time with her, and wasn't a good listener. I was stunned. This was all news to me. I pieced everything together and realized there was more going on. I insisted on seeing the text. It took nearly an hour convincing, but when she finally handed over her phone, I saw the shocking truth. The messages were explicit, and they talked about how much she wanted to be with him. They were already in love. She had started working with Michael only a month and a half ago. He was 15 to 20 years older, divorced, with multiple children. Meanwhile, I had been financially supporting her while she got back on her feet. I'd been putting in extra hours at work so she wouldn't have to take on a part-time job. We owned a house together with 3 dogs and a horse. I was devastated, completely blindsided by this betrayal. We were supposed to get married in 4 months. I'm at a loss right now, unsure how to move forward. Any advice would be appreciated. Update. I finally had the chance to sit down with her tonight and go over everything once more. She came in trying to place the blame on me, justifying her cheating and lying by saying it was because I wasn't communicating with her enough. She claimed she wouldn't have started talking to this guy if I had paid more attention to her. She accused me of spending too much time at the office and not enough time with her. I tried to explain that I was working extra hours to support her and our family financially, but it didn't seem to matter to her while she was struggling, trying to avoid taking a part-time job. She told me that she would have preferred to get a part-time job instead. This didn't make sense to me at all. She seemed to believe that, since the affair had only lasted for a week and they had kissed just once, we could simply move past it. When I brought up the text where she had been insulting me and engaging in sexual conversations with him, She quickly changed the subject, and I got nowhere. I told her I wasn't the reason this happened. She crossed a line. She should have communicated with me, or at least thought about the consequences of her actions before she went down that path. But now, I could never trust her again. Whether or not she tries to justify as my fault is up to her, but it's clear that it all comes down to what she chose to do. After this intense conversation, things settled down a bit. I suggested that we really needed to figure out what to do with the house we co-own and the 3 dogs. We agreed that either I would stay and buy her out, or we would sell and find new places. One of us would keep one of the dogs, while the other 2 would stay with the other person. That's where we left it, and I'll keep you updated as things progress. I'm curious, what would you all do about the house? Financially, I could manage it on my own, but it's nearly 3,000 square feet with 5 acres of land. The house was bought specifically to have room for her horse, and she plans on taking the horse when she leaves, boarding it at a barn. Update 2, Day 3. Tonight, I sat down with her for a 3-hour conversation. We discussed our relationship and what led to everything that happened. It started with her listing the things I did wrong. Lack of communication, spending too much time working, being too absorbed in my phone. I don't disagree with any of those points. The reason I worked so much was to support the family. I run an e-commerce business on the side and am a one-man customer service team. I'm always on call, with deals happening 24/7. I could definitely have done better by setting my phone aside and responding the next day, but the lack of communication was a two-way street. A prime example is that I never knew she was unhappy with how things were. She never told me, and she said she felt I would have gotten upset if she did, but she never gave me the chance to fix it. She'll be taking the horse to a barn, but the location is still to be determined. I discussed the dogs with her and offered to take one or none. She decided to take all 3 to keep them together. They're a happy group, and I don't want to fight over one if it means breaking them up. It also selfishly gives me the chance to move on with a clean slate. A week ago, I unexpectedly met someone, and I've been spending a lot of time with her. I have no unrealistic expectations, but I enjoy hanging out with her. She's been through something similar and has been a big help to me during this process. It's been eye-opening to converse with a kind, thoughtful, and independent woman. It's made me realize how narcissistic my ex was, self-centered, dependent, and manipulative. I should have listened to the warnings from family and friends much earlier. I definitely got stuck in the routine of the relationship, and I wasn't really enjoying life anymore. It was just a comfortable situation, nice house, lots of land, great animals, but I didn't want to rock the boat, so I stayed in it. You don't realize these things until you step back and reflect. Some might see it as wasted time, but I'm treating it as a learning experience. Moving forward, I won't ignore red flags and I won't get trapped by simplicity. I'll make sure to maintain relationships with my friends and family. Lastly, I just want to give a huge shout out to everyone who commented on my original Reddit post. When I was lost and had no idea what to do, your advice and support meant the world to me. I read every single comment, and they all helped me get to where I am now. I'm looking forward to the next chapter of my life, wherever it leads me. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart. Update 4. It's been a while since I last posted an update, and it's wild to think all of this started over 4 months ago. Time has made everything so much better, and I hope that if anyone stumbles upon this story while going through something similar, they'll realize that time really does heal everything. I lived in the house with my ex until mid-May, and it was painful. Being there with her and the dogs, knowing my life had changed so drastically, it was hard, but I'm finally moving forward and I knew it was over. We were just 2 people living under the same roof who didn't get along anymore. I did my best to avoid her, but it was nearly impossible. We stayed in separate bedrooms, though the dogs were free to roam back and forth through the house at night, with the doors left open. After a few weeks, she stopped staying in the guest room, and it hardly happened again for the rest of our time in the old house. However, the constant texting and phone calls continued. I think they decided not to pursue anything romantic, but agreed to remain friends. I wasn't sure, and honestly, I didn't care enough to ask. She moved out in mid-May, taking 2 of the 3 dogs with her. Saying goodbye to them was heartbreaking. The grief I felt was comparable to losing someone I loved. In the final month, I met her at the dog park a couple of times with the 2 dogs. They recognized me and seemed happy to see me, but I could tell they were doing just fine without me, which helped ease my pain. There wasn't much conversation with her, except for updates on how the dogs were adjusting. She moved into a rundown house in a less-than-ideal neighborhood, though it had a yard for the dogs, even if it wasn't fenced. Last I heard, she was working on finishing the fence. During this time, I focused on my physical health, hitting the gym every day. I also put a lot of energy into my side hustle, knowing that life was going to get expensive and I needed to be prepared. From March to June 15th, when I moved out, I made 6 figures in sales from this hustle and didn't make any large purchases. This helped me save a solid amount, in addition to the proceeds from selling my old property. Because of that, I was able to afford a nice house in a good neighborhood, with a decent-sized yard for the dog that stayed with me. Selling the old house was easy, but buying the new one was incredibly stressful. Thankfully, the buyers of my old place allowed me to rent it back from them for a month until June 15th. I made offers on 5 different houses before one was finally accepted at the end of May. Moving out of the old place was a huge relief. The house had been filled with memories that haunted me, especially after my ex left with the other 2 dogs. It just felt empty. While moving was a huge hassle, I had friends and family who stepped in to help. I've now been in my new home for a little over a month, and it's beginning to feel like home. I'm still seeing the same woman who is now officially my girlfriend. She lives closer to me now, which is nice, and treats me so well. I'm lucky to have her in my life, and she's been incredibly supportive throughout this whole process, respecting my need for space and understanding my emotional ups and downs. I've never been with someone who communicates as well as she does, and it's making me a better communicator myself. My emotional intelligence has also grown significantly. Overall, life is looking up. While this situation has been one of the toughest things I've gone through, I feel fortunate that it happened. I almost married someone who was completely self-centered and ungrateful. I was so comfortable in my routine that I didn't want to disrupt my life, my animals' lives, or lose my house. I was willing to tolerate misery for the sake of comfort. But now, I'm focusing on improving myself and learning more about my own wants and needs. I'll also continue to give my dog the best life possible. I do still think about my ex often. There are flashes of both good and bad memories. My new therapist has been incredibly helpful in guiding me to realize that I'll probably never get the apology I want from her. She's just too proud to admit her wrongdoings. Communication with my ex is minimal now, and I don't plan on seeing her or the other 2 dogs again. I've accepted that it's the best thing for everyone involved. If anyone has any questions or if I missed anything, feel free to comment, and I'd be happy to respond. This chapter is closed for me, and I won't be posting about it anymore. Thank you all for following my journey and for all the support during this process. I'm not perfect, and I admit that I sometimes do or say things that she interprets as rude. One example of this is a week or 2 ago when I was helping her with budgeting. She had been struggling financially, and I work in the financial industry, so I'm often helping clients with similar issues. She mentioned that she owed me a small amount, maybe $100, and she would pay it back in her next paycheck. When I suggested we go over the transfers to our joint account, it turned out to be over $500. My intent wasn't to make her feel bad, but to show how much I had been contributing. Unfortunately, she took this as me trying to humiliate her. I was just trying to help, though I admit the timing may not have been ideal. She told me that I've been too focused on money lately, but my goal was simply to make sure we were financially secure. We still had quite a bit to pay for our wedding, and I was overloaded with budgeting concerns, trying to ensure we had enough. What really bothers me is how she keeps justifying her actions by blaming my flaws. She keeps telling me she's surprised I would throw away 7 years of a relationship like this. I have to remind her that I didn't throw it away. She did, with her actions. She said that I told too many people too quickly, and that we could have worked things out between us. She also claimed that she wouldn't have talked to someone else if I had been a better listener and communicator. Finally, I've managed to figure out the extent of the affair. Based on the texts I saw, I believe it started a week or two before the incident. I'm not sure if they met up during that time, but the conversation seemed to suggest it outside of work. This time, he invited her to the park for a game of basketball and some conversation. She agreed to meet him, and they ended up kissing. I honestly believe it didn't progress any further, at least not yet, but I'm sure it would have soon. She insists he's not her boyfriend. Tonight she left, and I have no idea where she went. I'm assuming it's either with him or a friend. The situation is uncomfortable, but I'm hopeful it'll resolve soon. I do think she wants to reconcile and fix things, but I believe the main issue is the lack of communication that has built up over time. We fell into a routine, living a simple, uneventful life, and this problem was never addressed, just allowed to fester. She acted out instead of speaking to me and lied to my face, often talking badly about me behind my back. She can be very sneaky, and I don't think I'll ever fully trust her again. I know that getting back together would be the easiest route, but I'm not sure I'd ever truly be happy in that situation. Understanding the cause of everything has given me some clarity. If nothing else, it'll help me work on my own communication issues and see things from a different perspective. I started going to the gym today and plan to keep up the routine. I'm also going to pick up studying for my CFP designation again. I took the week off work to focus on my mental health. Today, I called the wedding venue and officially canceled the date. We were able to recover some money, but not all of it, unless the date can be resold, which seems unlikely. I also spoke with her parents to keep them in the loop. They live far away, and I know they're probably worried sick. I've assured them everything is calm, and there's no need for concern about their daughter. I did some research on interest rates today, and unfortunately, I'll likely have trouble finding a comparable house for the same mortgage I'm paying now. Apartments are going for higher prices these days. My best option might be to buy out her share and have her find an apartment. She seems to be okay with that idea. We'll have an appraiser come out to assess the property's value to see if I can manage half of the equity. My questions to you all are, does this change how you view the situation? Am I handling this well, or should I be doing something differently? Update 3. It's been almost a month since everything unfolded, and I owe you all an update. It's been a very emotional, busy, and eventful month. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The first few days after everything happened, I was a mess, desperately trying to get back with her despite the cheating. It's hard to admit, but it's part of the process of moving on. In that vulnerable state, I did everything I could think of to make things better, but nothing worked. Ultimately, I was told she had to choose between me and him, and she made the decision to be with him. That's when I snapped out of it. I realized I had let my self-worth slip away, and I needed to take a step back and focus on myself. After 7 years of always putting someone else first, it's difficult to suddenly prioritize my own needs. But that's exactly what I've been doing since. I moved our joint savings into my individual checking account and did the math on what I was owed. I transferred half of the balance back into the joint account for her to take. Since everything happened, I've been working out daily. It's been great for my physical appearance and helps me think more clearly. I've also gone suit shopping, treated myself to a massage, and spent time with friends and family. This relationship really isolated me from those I cared about, which should have been a major red flag, and I didn't take time for myself. Shopping for clothes was something I never bothered with. I was always focused on providing for my sick loved ones and the animals. For the first time in my life, I've been seeing a therapist weekly. It helps me talk through my feelings and decision-making, and I think I'll continue it even after the situation resolves to keep improving myself. Regarding the bigger picture, I'm still living in the house with my ex. She's been staying in the guest bedroom, and the only communication between us is about the dogs. I think she's a terrible person, and in her mind, everything is my fault. To accuse someone of poor communication and then use that as an excuse to avoid discussing her feelings and cheat is the height of hypocrisy. I stopped trying to reason with her because she's unreasonable. I've been moving forward with selling the house. I reached out to an agent and they came over and gave me a proposed sale price. She then insisted I contact 2 other agents to get their opinions, one of whom was recommended by a friend. Yes, I made the calls, set up appointments, and met with all of them. This is how our relationship always was, and even though it's unfair, I did everything to get out of there. After meeting with all 3 agents, we decided to go with the first one. Pictures were taken on Sunday, and the house was listed that evening. There's already been a lot of interest, with an open house scheduled for next Saturday.